Hello everyone, it's Gigabeef here, and today we're going to break down why BP is probably the best ammo in the game right now overall. Now that the meta has kind of been figured out for this patch, BP is becoming a bit of a plague all over the land of Tarkov. Whoa! BP, that's fine, these things happen. There are a few reasons why BP is working so well in 12.12, namely a combination of the round stats, 12.12's recoil change overall, the weapons it goes in, the distribution of common armors that players are fighting against, and its availability. First and foremost, let's look at the round itself. BP has always been good on paper, with 58 damage and 47 pen, which cleanly punches through class 4 to kill in 2 hits, and has around a 50% chance to pen class 5 at shortish distances too, even at full durability. One point about this which is often overlooked is the importance of damage, notably clearing the thresholds of thorax HP with 2 hits not only on a naked player but through armor as well. Even on a penetration, damage is mitigated by an amount which is usually about 15 to 20%, but despite this, 58 damage allows BP to kill in 2 regardless. The extra damage is also very useful against bosses and raiders, who have abnormal amounts of HP, normally in the thorax hitbox, that can make for frustrating encounters with lower damage rounds such as M855A1. This means that if you aren't wearing class 6 armor, which almost nobody is now, a 2-tap thorax death is actually very likely. With the changes to the economy and the game structure, class 6 is really out of vogue, partly due to availability, but also if you want to have an armor that lets you move relatively normally, you're not getting stomach protection in the vast majority of cases like the Slick. In fact, the only class 6 with stomach protection that has a move speed penalty under 25% is the Juk 6A, which has effectively been removed from the game, as it's unpurchasable from traders, no barters, no crafts, and not on the flea. It's incredibly rare, and strangely so, because it is arguably one of the worst class 6 armors in the game, other than the stomach protection factor, because it's ceramic so repairs awfully. Anyway, the actual stats on BP haven't changed in a very long time, but the game has shifted around it, propelling it upwards in the meta even further than it was to begin with. We had the introduction of the Mutant in 12.11, which with its great controllability and modding facilities when combined with BP made it a meta killing machine. Even with a few nerfs since we first saw it, this patch the Mutant is effectively the perfect storm of high controllability stats, as we know that not all weapons are made equal when it comes to the recoil number that we see in game, low rate of fire of 650 rounds per minute, of which all slow firing weapons have disproportionately benefited from the recoil changes in 12.12, and as well it has high modability that allows for good overall final stats. When combined with the first 2 factors, this makes the Mutant a legendary killing machine. It was good in 12.11, but in 12.12 it's a monster by virtue of everything else getting worse around it. However, it's not just the Mutant that has done well out of the recent changes. The AKM series of weapons also got the 308 adapter, allowing them to use many of the same suppressors as those for 7.6251 NATO. Taking this to its logical extreme, this allows players to use the Knight's Armament QDC suppressor with a new muzzle brake in a combo that turns out is best in slot. The suppressor itself was in the game before, but the only brake that was usable was the flash hider version. The actual brake being added propelled this combo to the top of the list and allows players to concoct contraptions such as the 37 recoil AKMN. Stepping back to the 44 recoil of the lowest recoil AKM, this compares to the 49 recoil of the lowest recoil Mutant, but with the difference of 600 versus 650 RPM, they act pretty similarly, with the Mutant naturally winning on time to kill overall. Against the alternatives, the step up is to 7.62x51, which is possible to get full auto via the SA58, the MDR or the SCAR H, but typically there is a trade-off here somewhere in terms of mag capacity, availability, ergo, cost or recoil. M80, M62 and M61 are great rounds, but this caliber is used overwhelmingly in semi-auto, and the power of a slightly smaller round used in controllable full auto weapons definitely has some advantages. That's not to say that 7.62x51 is bad, it's also probably top 3 in terms of the calibers used at the moment, partly for the same reasons as to why x39 is so good, but it's worth remembering that whilst the top rounds here do 70 to 80 damage, it's still not enough to one-tap the thorax anyway. Both M80 and M62 have lower pen than BP, and M61 is pretty hard to come by these days. Now, in terms of armor that you might be facing in raids, we've discussed this a few times on the channel, but basically 12.12 has restricted the availability of good armor heavily this wipe. The result of this is that plenty of players are still using Class 4 armor, which as we saw stands no chance against BP at all, and when players are using Class 5, it tends to overwhelmingly be those that are easier to access, such as the Korund and the Gazelle. With the damage that BP does, it's not uncommon to two-shot these armors with their low effective durability, as the second shot has an even greater chance of passing through than the first one once armor damage is dealt. The final piece of the puzzle with BP is around availability. For an extremely good round, you can get it in an awful lot of places, initially from Prapor 3, technically at level 26, but you have to complete the quest Punisher Part 5 first. This is the one where you have to kill 10 PMCs with the Packer and the Ratnik helmet, but remember the hard part is always finding the 2 PM pistols when you forget that you need them every wipe. Once you've done this, at the moment these cost 1,320 rubles per round from Prapor, and you can buy 120, which is quite a few for a meta round. The AP rounds for 300 Blackout as an example only lets you buy 90. 1,320 is fairly expensive, but for many players at higher levels, rubles are no longer an issue, so it's hardly a barrier for seeing them everywhere because the money is better spent on ammo than typically anything else. The second place to get it out of raid is the Workbench 3 craft, which needs Mechanic 3 requiring level 30, and the rest of the hideout prerequisites to get to that point. This costs roughly 100k for 120, so 1,200 per shot, but clearly this fluctuates with the market, takes time, and also prevents you from crafting something else profitable instead, given that you can't sell it on the flea anymore. However, if it's your only source of BP, or you're using a lot of it, it might be worthwhile to craft. Finally, getting ammo generally in raid is not always straightforward or consistent, but for BP you can find this often on raiders and boss guards because they generally have this within their 7.62 loadouts. Given they have multiple mags, it's not uncommon to see well over 100 rounds being hauled out of raid, which is firstly very profitable if you're using these bullets yourself, working out at around 80k per stack or so, but also providing extra bullets that would not be available with trader resets and workbench timers alone. Whoa! Whoa, there's loads of them. Oh my god! They all came in at once! Holy hell. Okay. This combination of availability factors does mean that if you want to run BP all the time, you are pretty much able to do so without too much problem. In conclusion, the 7.62 BP round, through the perfect balance of performance, weapon controllability and availability, has become the best round in 12-12 overall. It will be interesting to see how the meta shapes up as BSG continues to tweak the various aspects of the game. Remember, we're supposed to be getting realistic armor plates eventually as well. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons who help keep the channel improving, and to my Giga patrons who've gone above and beyond with their support so far. It really is invaluable. If you learned something, please consider dropping a like and a comment on the video. To see when I'm streaming, you can follow me on Twitter and Twitch. Check out our ScavTalk podcast in the links below, and with all that said, I'll see you next time, and as always, have fun in your raids.